So today, Peter Shmock here live in Seattle and Perpetua Neo in Singapore.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. And we always have great chats, I must say. I mean, we come from two different perspectives, but we mesh really well, and we look at it from different perspectives. But I always get something out of it. And so I think we will begin. And we decided to kind of talk about this idea of time, of sacrificing your time and knowing when to quit, or what does it mean to quit. Yeah. And take it from this was your initial idea, and I'm totally down with it. Let me know a little bit more about what you were thinking about, the context.
Absolutely. So when it comes to time, I think a lot of times we need to reframe it as energy, except that you go for all these courses in your organizations and you read all these articles, they all talk about managing your time. But we know that management is so passé, it's so 2000. It's all a mastery. So before we go into energy, let's talk about time, because we only have limited amount of time every day. And if we can master our time, this means we master our energy and vice versa. So there's a lot of different time sucks that we have in our day. It's really easy for me to hear my clients say, I just have to call them and speak for 5 minutes a day, and it's no big deal. So, you add on all this 5 minutes, but really it's not 5 minutes, because if you're dreading this thing and you go, oh God, it's just another obligation, or oh my gosh, it's going to be another kind of guilt fest. So you dread it, you get tired after the call, you ruminate and you get preoccupied after that. Mm-hmm. So actually, it's not 5 minutes. 5 minutes really can be 5 hours, and it affects the rest of your day and your work. So when you think about how all these different things compound, all this tiny little 5 minutes, then actually it steals away your time and your energy. So you need to be very territorial and discerning about all your various little chunks of 5 minutes, because it really is not just 5 minutes, not 300 seconds.
Do you think some of the issues and / problems that people get into is their own internal expectations that I should be doing this? I mean, yeah, I know it's not the most pleasant thing, and I get you. I get you that I'm wasting my energy, and I'm willing to look at it. But gosh, I feel, people say, I feel like I should, like this is the right thing to do, and I'm obligated to do this. And do you find people have a hard time seeing it in that particular way, and then learning how to, tackle it in another way, that there's a different philosophy around it, possibly, or practice?
Well, absolutely. Obligation and this sense of commitment for something that we didn't really sign up for can be one of the major reasons why we end up doing something that we don't like. So we dread it and we get even more tired, and as it becomes this habit, it becomes harder to say no. And a lot of times I believe that it's got to do with a lack of knowing how to say no, number one, and number two, having permission to say no. And it's actually really easy, knowing that we all have permission to say no for some things. Like for instance, when it comes to food, I hate bean sprouts. So when I order some foods that I know have bean sprouts, I will just say no bean sprouts because I don't want it. So if I can say no bean sprouts, then I can say no to other people. It's a transferable kind of skill. But of course, I know people who don't even dare to send their food back to the waiter. So it's for them to learn how to start to learn to say no. And then there comes the script, because many a time we don't have the right words. We feel that we are stumbling away. So when we open our mouths, it becomes difficult to say no. And in this case, what would you do if you didn't have the script?
Yeah, I would. That was funny because you said to send the plate back at dinner. And I can remember it wasn't all that many years ago. I mean, a decade or two, which is pretty far back, but still, of how liberating it was to value myself and my energy and my opinion and my likes, that I like food this way and I don't like it this way, and I'm not being mean and I'm not being discourteous, and I'm going to say thank you very much, but this doesn't meet my expectations. Can you cook it longer? Can you give me another plate of something?
Yeah.
And I think that was very revelatory for me early on, because it
Uh-huh.
gave me such a sense of freedom, and that my concept of who I thought I was, like I'm going to be a bad person if I, don't play along with it and just eat the food as it is and don't say anything. And
Mm-hmm.
what our grandparents used to say, don't make waves, don't make
Yeah.
waves. And so I said, well, no, I'm gonna make waves, but I'm gonna do it in a way that's nice. And my
Yeah.
God, how energizing and liberating that was when I first did something in that behalf.
I love that because I believe that we can have boundaries, we can express our opinions, but we can still be very gracious and respectful about it. So obviously, if I were going to somebody's house and they cooked dinner for everybody and they had bean sprouts, I would still eat it. I would just pick the bean sprouts aside. They're not going to get offended if I pick it aside because I'm going to savor the meal, right? I mean, I've been served, sometimes I forget to say no bean sprouts and I still eat it, I just leave it aside. So that is my kind of boundary. But if I were ordering food somewhere and I was paying for it or someone was paying for me and it's a service, then I'm quite happy to say that I don't want it. So I remember, quite a few years ago, I was having dinner with this group of people and the wrong foods were served. We all ordered different things and they didn't know what to say. So they were like, oh, never mind, I'll just eat it. But they looked really, really miserable and uncomfortable with, as I said, never mind, I'll just eat it. So I just went, let me sort that out for you. I called the waiter and said, we didn't order this. Could you please check? And we would like the food that we ordered. And it was just really simple. And they went like, wow, all my whole life, I've been eating all this food that I don't never had to send back. And I just laughed it off. I said, I'm bossy. Well, which is quite true. I sign off to some people that bossy, but it's not really about being bossy, It's about
No.
learning how to assert yourself. And with that, you reclaim your energy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think the same thing goes into the physical realm. I have another incident and then a story that just popped into my head. Um, I was skiing. One of the last times I skied before I kind of gave it up, and I was in Sun Valley, Idaho, and I was skiing. It was a beautiful, beautiful day, and a group of us had gone over there, and we were skiing the first half of the day, and then we came and we had lunch, and we were
Mm-hmm.
sitting down at, I think it's called Warm Springs, and we're outside, and the food is wonderful, and the people are all having fun, and it's warm out. And so somebody says, okay, well, we got to go back. We've got 3 hours left of skiing. And, I looked up at the sky and I was just so comfortable. And I said, I'm just going to stay here. And it was I think it was like one of the first times, it was very similar to sending food back, that I just said, hey, look, it's not because I don't like you guys. It's not because I'm tired and I'm in bad shape and I hate to admit it. It's just, frankly, I'd rather sit here in the sun than go ski. And I'm going to say that, and this is what I'm going to do. And hey, I'll see you all later and have a great day. And,
Yeah.
nothing negative. There were, and they went, okay, you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. And they had a great time. I had a great time. And I still to this day tell that story because that was a breakthrough for me. And I was in my 50s, by probably late 40s by then, to be able to give myself permission to say,
Yeah.
no, this is what I want to do. And I'm not being mean or nasty by saying I don't want to go with you.
Yeah. I think everybody has a choice. And as long as we are able to phrase it respectfully and graciously, we all can have a good time and we can learn a lot more about ourselves and about each other. And I think related to that, it's also this concept of FOMO, fear of missing out. So quite often I may go to a restaurant and I see people fill the whole table up with food. Sometimes I do that. Okay, but they fill up the whole table up with food because there's this idea that if I don't eat all the food I want to eat now, I'll never come back here and I'm going to just waste my time. So this is really scarcity kind of idea. Or if I'm on holiday, I need to drink all that I can drink. Or, on airplanes. So for instance, I know on some airplanes, some airlines, you have to pay for your drinks, right? But then on some other airlines, like Singapore Airlines, which I totally love, You don't have to pay for your drinks. But the
Hmm.
thing is that I never drink alcohol when flying because I know I don't like it when I'm flying, and I know I want to stay hydrated and happy. I want to sleep. But I know a lot of people who go on an airplane and say, I need to have as many drinks as possible. So, they just drink themselves crazy
Mm,
because this is that one shot, because it's all free, and otherwise they're going to miss out. And giving yourself this, taking away this scarcity mindset, giving yourself that luxury of freedom to know that, you know what, if I want to drink, I can come back and drink. And if we're going to make this drink count, it's going to be awesome kind of idea. Or I can always come back to this restaurant again. I don't need to order every single damn thing.
right. And
Mm-hmm.
I would love to be able to create a pill to give to people to. It had the word permission wrote on it. You said it very early on. Giving yourself permission. In this particular case, what you were just saying, to miss out. You're not really missing out on something, but it falls into the category of FOMO, with fear of missing out,
Yeah,
and to give oneself the permission to disengage, to stop, to even in working out. I coined the phrase long time ago about exercising, and I said, look, if you go in, give yourself the 5 minute rule, or live by the 5 minute rule.
mm-hmm.
Start to move. You may have expectations that you're going to lift a bunch of weight, or you're going to stretch, or you're going to get on the spin bike, or you're going to do whatever. And if you don't know really about where your energy is, and you're kind of having, I don't know, I don't really know if I want to be here. So give yourself 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, if your energy doesn't pick up, if your attitude doesn't start to get a little bit softer,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you start to feel like, oh, this feels good. And I
Mm-hmm.
start real slow. 5 minutes, if you don't feel like it, get up, change your clothes or not, grab your
Yeah.
bag, and go home, guilt-free.
Yeah.
But give yourself 5 minutes to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and that if you do decide to walk away, that it's not a sign of weakness. It's not
Yeah.
to be taken internally as, well, I am not the sort of person that stops or quits. I'm not the sort of person who doesn't finish through what I start. I'm not the person. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a great way to live. It's a great attribute to accomplish things, but it gets to be quite a limiting force until you start to kind of cross over and evolve it into, at some point in time, I'm going to give myself permission not to do this, because that's ultimately the best for me and in my life, and maybe even the performance and achievement that I want to create in my life.
Totally. So, related to this, remember the lady that I introduced you to on Facebook, Vanessa? So she
Yes.
runs a global performance firm called Next Evolution Performance, and she's based in Sydney. So I love her idea of energy credits. To her, we all have a limited number of energy credits a day. So you got to be really wise about how many credits you want to use up today. And technically, yeah, in a perfect world where we're all cyborgs, and we could bend time, we could do a lot of things. But the thing is that it's not perfect world. We're not cyborgs, we don't bend time. So we cannot do everything, right? So in this case, we got to be able to decide how much energy credits we want to give to our time, and how much energy credits we want to waste beating ourselves up about the fact that we walked away. And it's okay to quit. I know that a lot of us have been raised in cultures where we are told that never quit, or only losers quit.
Yeah.
So sometimes we fight too much of the good fight, and sometimes we overexert. Like, for instance, brought up Catholic, there's this is some I have fought the good fight to the very end. And when all these ideas have been drummed to your head since you were young, they just form part of your subconscious, and all these stories holding on to you. So I've been brought up to fight the good fight. And then there's also the Chinese Singaporean work ethic, just work, right? And when that happens, you just don't know when to quit. And to learn that actually life is also about learning how to try different things, to experiment, and learning what aligns with you. And maybe I take a tea course and learn a little bit about it, and then I don't want to get a PhD in tea tasting. And that's okay, because one day I might use whatever I learned from this 3-hour course and work on it with my clients.
Exactly.
Or one day it might be used in a kind of, I don't know, tea and chocolate pairing kind of situation, and in a social kind of setting.
Right.
So it's not just about wasting, it's also about learning where to experiment on what aligns with you right now. And so it's not really quitting, but if you want to see it as quitting, then I would say talk about what Seth Godin says. Winners quit earlier and faster and without guilt.
And sometimes the word that has played in my life, and I think is something that the people who I work with get a taste of, is we're not quitting, we're just stopping, and we're saying that this path at this speed, at this tempo right now that we've been going, has played out, and it's time to go at a different speed, and that speed may be to sleep. It's very hard for people who are accomplished and going and have the great work ethic and can produce to take time out when you have this this narrative in your head that I'm not giving it my 110%. There's a bunch of football cliches, you're only cheating yourself, all of these things, which are all guilt-ridden proposals and self-talk. And being okay with, and what you said earlier, following your gut, following your intuition that this is the right time not to go surfing because the tide's going out. The tide's not coming. And it's not that I'm quitting. It's just that I want to optimize my performance. So why don't I just stop for a while, sit on the beach and enjoy something else, and then the tide will come back in, and then I'll go surfing. And it wasn't the side that says, "Oh, you quit again. Bad. That's bad." And I know that for myself, one of the hardest things initially, when I was working with this very profound teacher in my life, is giving myself that time to disengage, my permission to do that. And for a while, there was a sense of dis-ease. There was an uncomfortableness that I experienced because I had this pull of this old way that I always had to be engaging, that I always had to be producing, that I always had to be expending energy. And I had to learn to be okay with that disease. And it goes away pretty fast, and frankly, it's well worth it. But I would say for anybody who's shifting into another way of engaging in their life and their business and their performance as an athlete, is that initially, once you say, okay, I'm going to give myself time, then there may be some discomfort in that. And just to ride it out and experience that, wow, I sure do. I'm glad I did that because I sure feel a lot better, and I'm rested, or I'm more recuperated, or I have a better clarity and insight on what I should do in my work as a CEO, etc.
And you also know that you can do a lot more in less time because you've learned how to rest. And I often tell my clients this Parkinson's rule. So to put it really simply, when you have a full tube of toothpaste, you just use it indiscriminately. But when you have this much left and you haven't gone to the shop, or a special toothpaste that needs to be ordered online and all that stuff, and there's no next day delivery, what do? You make it last. So if you have this amount of time, then you're going to go all the way in, and you're going to make that time work. So for instance, I have ADHD, not diagnosed, but I definitely know I have that because I'm so hyperactive. I cannot focus in groups unless I'm totally engaged. So what happens is people with ADHD brains, we need deadlines. And when there's a deadline created, then we really force ourselves to go all the way to the finish line. And if it's something we really love, we hyper-focus. So in the same way, when you learn how to rest, you don't give yourself so much time, and you just go straight charge at it in the best way you can. I think that's an amazing thing because you learn to optimize your time and energy, and you learn to recharge your brain. You also learn to tell yourself that actually I've got all this time to savor my life.
Yeah, and to come back and to be, aware of one's, energy or one's demeanor or one's clarity that, oh, this is better. Yeah, I'm more energized because I took that time out, or I'm more clear, or I'm more you know, more period, and that there wasn't what one might think, and what I certainly did for a long time, thinking there's going to be less. If I do this, there's
Yeah.
going to be less, as
Yeah.
opposed to there's going to be more. And all of a sudden, like, oh wow, this is really cool. I can do this more often because I get something out of this. It's really, really wonderful.
And also, I think it's also about learning how to be bored, to do nothing. Because often one symptom of anxiety, high performing anxiety, is workaholism. So we just throw ourselves into our work. And when we don't have work, we throw ourselves into escape. So we oscillate between obsessing and escaping. And when we're left to our own devices, we just don't know what to do. So for instance, we're mindlessly scrolling on our phones or computers, and that's not good for our brains. That's not good for our sanity, because we got to learn how to be bored. That's when our default mode network in our brain gets awake and alive, and that's when it gets the most creative. But we need to give it the conditions and the space to do so. So when we learn how to do nothing, we learn to sit with ourselves, and we actually it's a total win-win.
Yeah, to sit with yourself, to be okay. I just listened to a Jack Kornfield talk that he gave at Stanford University, and I just was going through YouTube, and I was
Yeah.
I forget what theme I was on, but I ran across him, and I've read a book of his and listened to him before it, and you know, he was talking about this mindfulness, and starting with that as a starting place, is being mindful to your body,
Yeah.
mindful of your body. And somewhere within the talk, he said, you know, we do all these things to distract ourselves, and we're not capable of being bored because we can't sit with ourselves. And he just said it so eloquently, and just as you did. I'm so glad you brought up the word boredom, because it says it points in a wonderful direction, that if we can be okay with what we perceive as boredom, of just being with ourselves, and create that connection, that wow, the field of opportunity and of joy even, it is so much more immense. And again, it comes back to having more and not less. It's not a negative. It's hard initially. I grant some people that do that. You know, I've always been an achievement junkie most of my life, but you know, I'm a recovering type A, as I say. But
Or
it's
you're making your type A work for you.
I'm making my way, very well said. I'm making my type A work for me. So I said, you know, yes, seek boredom.
Yeah.
seek boredom. Be okay with it. You'll love it. You'll love it.
You're not going to die from being bored. And also, I think that it's really important to remove the judgments that you have, whether it's your own judgments or internalized from somebody else, that you're not doing anything cool, you're not going to the latest party or whatever. Sometimes you gotta learn to be your own best company. I think it was Sartre or Camus who said that if you are bored when alone, then you're in really bad company.
I've never heard that. That's great.
Well, the French philosophers are amazing.
And I go all the way, and I go back to a conversation a long time ago. Some woman who, I don't think I was working with them, but saying, well, so what do you do for your cardio exercise? Well, I hate riding the bike. Well, how come you hate riding the bike? Meaning a stationary bike at the gym.
Okay.
It's like, go for, the old adage, go for 20 or 30 minutes. He said, oh, it's so boring. And I go, so what's wrong with, it may not be stimulating, some of the other things that you like to do, but you could get into it, get into some really interesting thought, just hanging out and breathing. She would have nothing of it at that time.
I guess sometimes you gotta put yourself in a situation when you have no choice but to be bored, in order to learn how to be bored, or to just be told that it's okay to be bored. There's nothing wrong with you if you're bored or you're not doing anything. You're not just piling your calendar up with people and stuff.
Right. And you're talking to the people who you work with, just as I am. And I don't think I'm not going to make an assumption here that you don't work with people that aren't successful. And I know, and I've had this told to me by a CEO who I work with, and I did not even realize this. And he said, you're working with people that are obviously wanting to know how to be better and in a larger scope than what he was talking about himself, has learned to do, which is work really, really hard every single day for really long hours. And he said, frankly, it's a really narrow scope. And he was saying this about himself. He was saying that, this is such a much more kind of evolved way of going forward in business as a CEO, but also as a human being. And yeah. I would imagine that's the same for the folks that you work with, that this isn't about, mindfulness for the sake of, and I'm not saying that what Jack Cornfield is saying is incorrect at all. But I mean, we're talking about this from the standpoint of is high performance and achieving, but just doing it in a way which you very eloquently said, in a way that works for you.
Yeah, like I always tell my clients, you want to be type A, then you better learn how to be type A while being type A, which means take care of your brain.
That's so good. Yeah, you're taking these things that I had in my mind, and I was thinking of this. I was thinking of this scenario of talking to a client. I don't remember who it was, but I said, "Look, you're really intelligent, right? I mean, yeah. I mean, we can acknowledge that you've been really successful. You've made money. You really, really. I want you to use your intelligence for a moment, just to look at this and the way you're interacting with your life, and just examine it and say, with this knowledge that you have, and with your foresight, does it make sense to you that you would continue to go about your life and business and achieving in your body in this particular way?" Mm-hmm. So exactly the same thing. I haven't said that to anybody, but I've had that thought in my mind that I wanted to share.
Well, now it's called type A. Be type A about being type A.
Type A, okay. That's really good.
Like type A people want to be, the best at everything. So you better be the best at being type A too. Meaning that you don't overexert yourself and you don't burn out. Because a lot of people, when my clients come to me when something has gone wrong in their lives. So it could be a relationship, it could be panic attacks, or they're realizing that I'm so sick of my brain and my head and my sleep, and I'm losing focus, I'm fatigued, and at the same time I've got all these goals that I want to achieve. So it's not just one goal. So nobody comes to me just telling me I want better sleep. I wish it was so simple, but no. So because of that, I always tell them that, okay, you want all these things happening in your life, and it's time for you to take stock that whatever you're doing is not really working that well. It's helped you to manage, but we know that management is passive. It's not going to help you, right? And people say, oh, manage your demons. Yeah, you can do that by drinking every night and sleeping after that. But the next day you're going to have a headache. You're going to feel more and more dependent. You're going to learn how to feel helpless and hopeless as time goes by. Right. So managing your demons isn't really cool. Then you can think about starving your demons. But then, let's face it, we're going to find new demons. So then, how about making your demons work for you?
Yes, yeah, and much more compassionate way of treating demons anyway.
Yeah,
I like that.
Some of my clients are laughing now, saying that I'm having this image of having all these demons coming up, and they're and I'm driving the sleigh, and the demons are the horses or the reindeers. And I'm like, yeah, why not?
No, that's perfect. I just keep coming back to a Yoda in Jedi, and what he was expounding was just finding an easier way, a more sustainable way, and using really your internal powers, as I see it, and your internal powers of what you said earlier, of your intuition, of knowing what you feel, and if you're feeling discomfort, that you're okay with that discomfort. Yeah. But then that ultimately, whether you're achieving or or not, you still have this life. And I think for me, probably the best thing I can say is that I not only achieved better when I learned how to, give myself permission, but my life was a lot more enjoyable, frankly. And living in this imprisonment, of this between these bars, looking out and saying, "Oh my God, I only have one way of existing in the world, and it's to, not quit and keep putting my head down and charging ahead." And I can still do that, but I'm very, very grateful for having a taste of that. And what I love talking about with you and sharing with others is, giving people the idea, the notion, and hopefully they give themselves the permission to do that on their own.
Yeah. So let's go back a little to French philosophy again. Have you heard of the myth of Sisyphus?
Yes.
Yes. So you want to tell everybody what Sisyphus is about?
I'm probably not, I go by images, but I'm probably not very good with what the story is. So wait, could you do that? Could you talk?
Well, Sisyphus was basically condemned to roll up this big boulder up a hill every day. And when the next day comes, he starts from the bottom. So imagine doing that over and over again. That's kind of like hell. And when you talked about this image of being locked and imprisoned within the iron cage of achievement and accomplishment all the time, that reminds me a lot about Sisyphus, because day in, day out, all you do is you pull it, you're condemned to having that boulder up. And even though you grow bigger and stronger and people go, yeah, you're great, like 5 boulders, 10 boulders, the next day you wake up and you start there again. You have to push that boulder. And life isn't just about pushing boulders or accomplishments, even if it's quite hard to believe.
Yes.
And maybe sometimes we've locked ourselves in a situation where we have no choice but to keep pushing the boulders up. So for instance, I know a lot of people who say things like, oh, I cannot afford to change my lifestyle because my kids love their schools that they're in. I cannot afford to pay the cars off, or I cannot afford to pay the mortgage off. So quite often what happens is, as we achieve a new level, our life expenditure increases disproportionately to that. So then we lock ourselves up. But actually, I think that quite often we have a choice in how we want to consume. So, you may think I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I do like a cushy lifestyle. I love my luxuries, but at the same time, I'm always very cautious to make sure that I'm not trapped within a prison of my own making. So a lot of times it's also about simplifying and asking ourselves, if I'm going to increase my lifestyle, is it just because everybody else is doing that? Just because everybody is buying that really, really big car, like in Singapore, cars are super expensive. So just because everybody's doing that, do I have to do that for show? Or am I doing that mindlessly? Do I have to buy a certain kind of handbag just because everybody is wearing that as a status signal? Because if it's going to trap me, then I'm not going to be happy. And I'm going to keep going into that kind of samsara where I have to keep status signaling, and I'm never going to match up to somebody else because it's going to be another set of Joneses to compare to.
Right. And I just came across writing my next newsletter, and I came across Byron Katie, who I don't know that much of her work, but what I know of her work, I really, really like. She's very much in the human potential. This may be understating what she does, but the human potential movement. And she has a very famous, she has 4 questions, I believe. And one of the ones that I remember and was interested in was, is it true? And the video that I started to watch, I didn't finish it because I just got what I needed in the first minute or so, but it was the power of inquiry. To inquire and to ask oneself, is this true? Do I really need this?
Yeah.
What will this do for me? And, I talk to people all the time about asking themselves where their energy is, on a scale of 0 to 10. Where's your energy right now? Not where do you want it to be, but where is it? Is it more than 5 or is it less than 5? And what can you do? Then the next question is, what can you do with that energy? Is there enough to expand, or do you need to to build it. So, what you're talking about, it reminded me of Byron Katie about the self-inquiry and the power of,
Yeah.
is this the way that I want to, do I want to keep living my life of working harder and pushing the rock up the hill to have this car? And why do I want this car? What's the why? And this, ask the question and then wait for the answer.
Yeah. Like, why do I want to chain myself and add more chains or add more boulders to push? And yes, you can have luxury, you can have a tasteful life. At the same time, it's really about maybe what my mom always says, cutting your clothes according to your cloth.
Yeah.
Learning what you want. Sometimes some things have got to give. Sometimes you got to be able to indulge. But it's about not being disproportionate and not being excessive. And perhaps, being discerning about what you want in your life.
Yeah. Be discerning. What do you want in your life? So, boy, we covered a lot of territory, a lot. And do you have any final thought to leave with the audience or the viewers that see this?
Well, yeah, we have covered a lot, from restaurants to French
Wow.
philosophy.
I know.
That's pretty much.
Sisyphus, pushing boulders up hills, permission.
Yeah, and I think the really important thing is to honor your time, honor your energy, because nobody else will do that for you. You can take as many time management courses as you want, and that might teach you how to schedule things into your timetable. But that's not going to change how, at a fundamental level, how you want to live your life. It's like, what you talk about, Byron Katie, this inquiry about wisely wanting to decide on what fits in your life. And just because something fits in one season, we're talking about experiences, lifestyles, relationships, doesn't mean that it's going to fit forever. And there is a point in which sometimes we got to be able to stand back and examine whether it's causing more harm than good, and learning when to extricate ourselves from a certain situation, and that it's not being a loser. Winners quit early, and I think that's a really good thing.
And you're not a loser. And the opposite of not a loser is you're a winner. So we end with, you are a winner. Give yourself permission. Thank you. Awesome as always.
Yay.
We will be back again for another edition of this and another topic that we will both love talking about. I know that.
Totally.
Until then, thank you so much.
Thank you.